Hi, third graders. Welcome to your social studies lesson this week. We're going to talk about the story of Rhode Island, which is continuing our New England colonies. You've already learned about the southern colonies, and you learned about William Bradford and the Plymouth colony. I hope you all enjoyed that cartoon. I thought it was pretty cool, a little cheesy, but a good cartoon and a good story. So we're going to talk about the story of Rhode Island today in the New England colonies. And I'm just decided that I was just going to go over the slides together and you guys can kind of read along and I will walk you through it. So I need you to grab a piece of paper, blank paper, and make it look like the web below. And you should have about 6 bubbles that go around the center one. But always leave a little extra space because I know some of you like to just take extra notes and things like that. So go ahead and pause and get a piece of paper. All right, good job grabbing that paper and making your web. If you didn't, pause again and go back a little bit. When I say pause, that's just your time to pause it so that you can get caught up on notes during this lesson. All right, so when you see purple, that means you need to add a detail to one of your bubbles or circles, kind of like this guy's purple. So don't do that yet. You don't need to be drawing a minion, but maybe when you're done, if you want to draw a minion dressed up as a colonist from Rhode Island or the New England, I think that would be kind of funny. So you can throw that in there in the corner and your teachers can see it if you want to. Not required. All right, Roger Williams, you're going to put his name in the center bubble, but leave a little bit of space because you're going to kind of explain who he is. So write Roger Williams in that center circle, but leave a little bit of space. Don't write put in center bubble. That would be kind of silly. All right, so go ahead and as you're writing that, I'll just start writing or reading about Roger Williams. So he was born in London, England, and at the same age as us. Well, not your teachers. We're a lot older than you. That'd be weird if we were teaching you at age 9. But you guys are all about 9. His minister, the leader of his church, was brutally killed because he disagreed with the king's church, which is of England. So imagine that you just disagreed with what your church was saying, or a king or something. You couldn't have your opinion heard. They would just kill you. It's awful. Today, you get the chance to speak your opinions in a safe way, which is a lot nicer. So he was shocked by this. I'm sure others were, but he wanted to change it. So he had to show some bravery and courage here because if you wanted to make a change, you had to do it carefully so that you wouldn't be killed. Kind of crazy. So he went to school, studied the Bible. I'm not teaching you about religion. I'm just teaching you about Roger Williams. And eventually went to one of the most famous universities still today called Cambridge University. And he became a Puritan minister. So I want you to write Puritan minister underneath or with Roger Williams in that center circle. So, and that's what he looked like. So pause now and write Puritan minister and Roger Williams in that center circle. All right, nice job writing that. Let's move on. Here he is again. The king is mean. I want some freedom. I'm nice, so let's go to Massachusetts and pay Native Americans money for their land. So he wanted to pay the Native Americans what? I shall sail to Boston and become a minister. What year is it again? 1631. So in the one of your other circles, you're going to put these two together in one bubble or one circle and write in 1631, sailed to Boston and became a minister. You could put that in your own words or you could just copy those down into the same circle. So go ahead and pause and write those in. All right, nice job writing that. So he knew about the colonies and he thought that was a place where he could start his own religious freedom in his own colony in his own way for others. So Roger Williams made friends with natives but enemies with Puritan leaders. He wanted to be separate from the Church of England. And he spoke out against many of the Puritans' ways because they were not kind to all people. So the Puritans were very specific to who they liked and who they didn't like. But Roger Williams wanted just kindness for everyone and freedom for everyone. He was a good guy that way. So go ahead and write this in. So pause and write that in. Nice job. You guys are taking good notes. It's like I'm there with you, watching you take notes. So we have, you're too pure. Why would you want to leave the Church of England? Will you teach me your language. Of course, you are a kind man. So the Puritans were mad, the natives were happy and wanted to help out. So the Puritans disagree. And we're going to talk more about the Puritans next week a little bit. You'll get a little bit more info this week, but then a lot next week. We'll have some fun. The Puritans wanted to send Roger Williams back to England. Lucky for Roger Williams, it was almost winter and he was sick, so they waited to spring. They weren't that rude. So they would wait for him to get better until the spring and then send him back to England because they didn't like him. But Roger Williams was sneaky, got out of Massachusetts, and went to Rhode Island. He called it Rhode Island. It's a new land. And then he lived with the Native Americans because he was kind to them. The Native Americans just took him in and let him hang out with him for the winter, make sure he was healthy, and helped him out. And in the spring, some of his Puritan friends came to help him. And he started the first town in Rhode Island called Providence. So this is what Providence would have looked like back then. And he was able to create his own colony the way he wanted it to, called Providence in Rhode Island. So pause and write that down in the next circle or bubble. Nice job. All right, the Puritans disagreed, but were nice enough to send Roger Williams back to England. Maybe they had their own kid president because he's saying, I disagree with you, but I still like you as a person who is a human being, and I will treat you like that because if I didn't, I would make everything bad, and that's what a lot of people do, and it's lame. I love kid president. So the Puritans were not like the worst people because they wanted to keep him alive and just send him back to England instead of just like killing him or something. So they were nicer than like the King of England back then. But either way, Roger Williams got to create his own colony and town called Providence. So Williams gave all his land to the town. Everyone helped rule. No one was punished for their beliefs. And many people of all religions came to Providence, and eventually more towns were settled near Providence. So pause now and write that because that's super important. Cool. I hope you all that's like one of the biggest points of this whole thing is anyone could believe anything they wanted. They could go to Providence in Rhode Island with Roger Williams and do their own religion there. It's kind of cool. And this is what Providence looks like nowadays. Pretty cool. Still there. And we still have some of our freedoms today, which is nice. Inspired by Roger Williams, like the kindest colony ever. In your next bubble or next circle, write Anne Hutchinson. And with that, write a brave Puritan woman. So she is a lot like Roger Williams. She knew a lot about the Bible, but didn't like kind of what her ministers were telling her. She kind of had her own beliefs based on the Bible, and she didn't like what she was being told to believe or do. She had her own thoughts. So she was also kicked out of Massachusetts, and she started a town called Portsmouth near Providence, so a lot like Roger Williams. That's kind of what she looked like. And for a woman back then to be able to do that is awesome. So she's kind of like a cool hero, very famous women's rights type of person. So you guys learned about that a little bit in second grade. She had to be super brave and super courageous back then to even be able to speak in front of men. So good for her. I don't look at her as just Anne Hutchinson. I think she's more of Wonder Woman because that's how cool she was. So Wonder Woman is super brave and courageous. I feel like they're two in the same. Because you had to have a lot of bravery, a lot of courage, and to make a difference back then, and she was able to do it. So good for her. All right, last bit of important facts. If you have room, you could write this right here. If you don't, that's okay. You could just throw it in the corner or something. But let's just review kind of like this real quick. Rhode Island had more religious freedom than any other colony. I would totally want to live there. Roger Williams became president of Rhode Island. I would love a kind president. So I would totally live there too. I'm not saying a president isn't either. I have no political issues here. But it became a place to make a good life, have peace, and see kindness. So this whole area is just about kindness and religious freedom. I love it. And it was a place that separated religion from government. So those were two separate things. You had your government, but you could believe and study your own religion the way you wanted to. We still see that today in America. pretty cool for Roger Williams. You don't have a shoulder partner now, because that's kind of funny. You're stuck at home without a shoulder partner, but you have a parent and maybe a sibling or a dog or a cat or a stuffed animal. Go ahead and tell that person or stuffy or pet, how did Roger Williams create the colony of Rhode Island? Tell them that, and then just kind of put this in your brain a little bit. What are the differences so far between the southern colonies and the New England colonies? Because you're going to want to know that at the end of this unit when we end our long distance learning. There will be a little test or quiz at the end where you're going to need to compare and contrast all three regions, southern New England and middle colonies. So be ready for that. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed your lesson today. I hope you got good notes in there. If you draw a minion, good for you. That's cool. If you don't, it's okay. I care about the notes, and I care about the learning about Roger Williams and Hutchinson and Rhode Island. We miss you guys, and good job. Social studies is cool. And for some reason, it still shows me saving this to my desktop. So if you're still watching, I hope you're having fun at home, studying hard and being a good third grader and still choosing kind whenever you can. And that's how I save that. Goodbye.